All right, welcome back to SouFLoTV. Again, everybody, it is your host with the most. This is part 3 of They Have Big Plans for Us. Okay? And if you've missed part 1 and part 2, then you are definitely going to be lost in part 3. This is a beautiful listen, and if anything at all, this should be at the least mind-opening, food for thought. Okay? Now, I'm going to go right into this. Jamaicans. And when I say Jamaicans, I am very well aware that Jamaica has this out of many one mantra. But when I say Jamaicans, I am in part talking to every Jamaican, regardless of skin color, background, whatever. But I am specifically talking to Jamaicans of African descent. However, the message is for all Jamaicans. So I say Jamaicans. The Chinese people know, right, that you are a conquered people. You have been conquered more than once. Don't get offensive. Or don't get offended, or don't get defensive, because that's the first thing that a Jamaican does. If you ever say anything bad about their history, where they are on the downside of it, then things can get pretty ugly. Never forget that warrior spirit. It's in us, okay? That blood runs through these veins. You are warriors from warriors. The Chinese people know that you have been conquered. You were conquered by the Spanish. Jamaica was under Spanish rule for quite some time. You were conquered by the British. You were under British rule, which seems like for an eternity. Okay? And Lord knows how many other conquered and conquerors are in the history of. But let's go with those two. And the Chinese people saw and are still seeing the great wealth that came out of you once you were conquered. Now, what that tells them is that you are up for the taking. History repeats itself. It is a saying that is very true. If that saying is very true, then we should be very fearful, because there is a part of our history that we never want to repeat itself. So when you hear slavery, you're probably thinking shackled by the feet, chains swinging, chop your feet off if you run away from the plantation. Yes, sir, massa. Working all day in the sun, sir, just to make you happy, massa. That's not the type of slavery that will exist in the future, and it's not the type of slavery that exists now. We're talking about a higher level of slavery. We're talking about the institutionalized slavery within a modern society. So you will be brain drained. You will be working for someone else's kingdom to build someone else's greatness. That is slavery, because you cannot do that for your own, because you will not be afforded the opportunity to do that for your own. Anyhow, part 3 is supposed to be about the solution. So they said, SouFlo, you talk the good talk in 1 and 2. Part 3 better have some solutions, because we pointed out the problems. Now we got to talk about the solutions. We don't just talk about problems. We give suggestions that are great enough to be solutions if they are applied. And a wise man once said, if you have solutions, then you have no problems. Right? Okay. Let's start off with this. Let's start off with changing the curriculum. Changing the curriculum that is taught in our schools throughout the entire Caribbean, where it is predominantly people of African descent. Changing the curriculum, how it is taught in our schools, to something that is more beneficial to us. Teach true history. True history. Full history. Instill pride from kindergarten age all the way up. Let go of this white Jesus concept. Ooh, no, you didn't, SouFLo. No, you did not just say that. No, someone just fell out of their chair just now and said, Jesus, I rebuke him. Because I said, let go of the white Jesus concept. You see, this wheel was set in motion. And if you read the Willie Lynch theory, you will know that this wheel was set in motion. And this wheel was set in motion and designed to be in a way where they will no longer have to crack a whip for you to carry on these self-destructive traditions. You will willfully and willingly pass it on to your youngins. Generation after generation after generation of destruction. Why? I've always said this. When we look at each other, we do not see God in each other. That is why it is hard for us to respect each other, to trust each other, to love each other, our own kind, to pool our resources together, to support each other, and therefore impossible for us to build a true kingdom. The Chinese have a kingdom, and they are very dedicated to their own. But they don't have a white Jesus complex. They're not confused as to why was I taught throughout my whole life that God is a white man. And now I see white men around me every day, and I find myself acting subservient to them. Whether it's outright or it's things that I do without even noticing. That seed is planted from early. We need to get rid of that. Any church pastor, black man, and I'm not saying to do away with the church. I am saying any church pastor, black man, woman preaching and are endorsing this white God concept to black children, or are telling us that it does not matter what color God is. But he came on a cross. He came and he died on a cross, and he lived as a man. And he was a color. And the book that you study and preach from, your Christian book, your Bible, it describes someone that sounds like a black man. So these funny pictures that you have around, twisting the doctrine, having us believe that white is right. Light, the lighter the skin, the thinner the hair, the lighter in color the eyes, the more superior they are. That is what that has done. And I'm not arguing with you about it. There's no room for argument. I've lived on earth long enough to see So once we get away from that, then we can talk about things like commercial farming. Because right now, everyone's saying, boy, we don't have enough jobs, we need jobs, we need jobs. Well, it's funny that when this COVID, whatever it is, corona thing hit, that one of the things we quickly realized was that food is essential. Farmers are essential. And growing your own food supply can only be a smart thing. If you have to depend on others to feed you, then they can control you, because they can control you by putting things in your food that are not good for you. They affect your mind, they affect your body, they affect the way you function in the short life that you will be living. They can also cut your food supply and starve you into submission. So, yeah, commercial farming. Not to mention, we should be farming up the country. The country is lush. The soil is fertile. We should be exporting all kinds of goods. We should be putting our young people to work, farming for themselves. You had no problem farming when some white man or some Spanish man was cracking a whip across your back. You were farming 100 miles an hour. It's okay. We can make farming look cool. The thing is, we ourselves have turned our noses up at farming because we have taught our children, I know why you be no farmer when you grow up. I want you to be a doctor. I want you to be a lawyer. And now we're oversaturated with doctors and lawyers who still need food from farmers. So we're talking about commercial farming. We're talking about growing our own food, which will help with all these health issues that we're having, because we have started importing more foods than exporting. So we don't even have the medical resources to contain, let alone control and cure or treat properly a lot of these new diseases that have suddenly taken over the Caribbean. Jamaica in particular has become amputation central. Let's talk about the crime and the violence. And a lot of people are running away to other countries and saying, oh, it's safer here because they're killing on so rampantly. Well, remember we talked about the whole CCTV, but it's not just CCTV, it's CCTV with a central monitoring point. A central monitoring point will also provide jobs. So we've got people farming on a commercial level. We've got central monitoring points that are responsible for all the CCTVs, the million CCTVs across the island. And someone has to monitor them. Do you know that the city of London, England alone has thousands of cameras with a few central monitoring points. And those cameras are monitored 24/7. People who work on shifts in teams. That means anything goes down at any given hour on these streets, left, right, up, or down, you are on camera and you will be visited quick, fast, and in a hurry. We have to fix that murder rate issue, particularly in Jamaica, because that alone has scared away so many Jamaicans that they have gone overseas. The life that they wished for as children, they have managed to attain these lives. There are Jamaicans overseas that are living some beautiful lives. And I'm talking about financially secured. I'm talking about highly educated and accomplished. And they would never go back to Jamaica. They've already made up their minds that they will live out their last days in someone else's country. So there will be no paying it forward. There will be no old money. All that our ancestors had worked and slaved for, all that they had wished for us, we will have to turn our backs on it. So many have turned their backs on it and walked away. And who can blame them? Who wants to be murdered? I mean, you could be murdered anywhere, but Jamaica had like 200 and something murders in the first 60 days of the year. Over 200 murders in the first 60 days of a new year. And majority of those killers are still walking around. So the place has to be secured. CCTVs with central monitoring points. And a lot of people have said, hey boy, put everybody business on camera. Those are people who have things to hide, because citizens who have nothing to hide, they'll conduct their business inside of their house. They don't give a damn who's seeing outside, because they're not doing anything illegal outside. Now, we could talk about the legalization of ganja, marijuana, herb. Isn't it funny how ganja, marijuana, herb has become the healing of the nation, like many Rastamen had said it is, from way before Bob Marley to Bob Marley on, right? Ganja, herb. And now the medical marijuana industry is booming. We should be at the forefront of this, because the world knows Jamaica's brand of ganja. Jamaica itself is an island sitting on water. It's like a natural hydroponic plant. So when people in Canada are growing hydro, Jamaica's hydro grows naturally from the earth. The same effect, but organic. We should be at the forefront of this multi-trillion-dollar industry. There's a Jamaican scientist that has developed and patented a cure for cancer. A marijuana cure for cancer. Marijuana-based cure. He needs investors to invest in him. Also, he needs it to be pushed to the forefront of the market. When this whole corona thing broke, to see 4 engineers, young black men, make a respirator, it was disheartening to know that we have that type of knowledge among our people. But yet we depend on outsiders. Please send us a respirator. We're killing the country's budget to pay China to develop respirators. We're begging the US to let the respirators pass to come through to us. And we're on the ground worried. We're turning away a pregnant mother because we're in fear that she might have corona and we would not be able to treat her if her lungs start to shut down or her lung capacity decreases drastically and we don't have enough respirators. So she goes and she delivers and then she dies, 23 years old, a few days away from her 24th birthday. But yet we have the intelligence among us to create from scratch respirators. So you ask yourself, how come our government's not investing in these minds? Why don't we have factories that are creating things? Imagine if we created majority of the things that we needed. Put the entire country to work. I remember Jesse Gender said, they have plans for us. They want to turn my father into a gardener and turn my mother into a maid. He was talking about when the tourist flies in, you will be there to serve them hand and foot. And if you look at it, majority of our people are now going into, it's like that's the thing to do because that's what's left. I'm going to start working at this hotel until I find something better. So there they are at the hotels, and they're chefs, and they're maids because they're cleaning rooms and changing beds and keeping the hotels running. And nothing's wrong with that, but we have to aspire to be more, right? The same way we have a booming tourism industry, it's the same way we can have a booming industry where we have factories that create respirators from scratch and assemble them and ship them out, export them to the rest of the world who needs them. And not just respirators, any and everything. Put these great minds to use. Produce the things that we need and export more than we import. One of the saddest things I've ever seen was when I was told that, and this was printed in the Gleaner, Jamaica was importing chicken back. For those of you who highty-tighty, you might not know what chicken back is. But when Jamaica got to importing chicken back, the back part of the chicken, the oily back part of the chicken, I said, this isn't normal. This is terrible. We're importing beef and chicken. You know how fertile our land is? And I went to see my grandfather in the countryside of Clarendon, and my grandfather said, yeah, the cow farmer them just take the rope off of the cow them and just pop down the fence and leg of the cow. Let the cow go and let his cows just run. And anybody who want them, take them. Because the price of beef had gone down so much that our local farmers, it was pointless. When I was growing up, if you had 10 cows, you were a wealthy person. So imagine if you had like 20, 30 cows. Now, not so much. Because that beef is being imported at a rock bottom cheap price, and our people do not know that that beef has been injected, or that chicken meat has been injected with formaldehyde and all other kinds of substances created in a lab to make it appear as if it is fresh to you, even though it has been around for months or even years, causing all kinds of sickness in the human body. So it's important for us to start to control our food supply. We need to form bilateral relationships with the rest of the Caribbean and link the rest of the Caribbean with Africa. Yes, it is time that the Caribbean functions as one. Could you imagine how heavenly it would be for you to be able to travel to every Caribbean island there is and spend time in each one and build relationships in each one? Every one of these Caribbean islands are beautiful and have something to offer. But every one of these Caribbean islands have citizens in masses that are running away from them to get to what we call the first world countries. Why? Ask yourself why. Imagine not having to run away. When I'm in Jamaica and I drive through places like Westmoreland and I see like the board house perched on the edge of a hill that overlooks the beautiful ocean, and I think, wow, I don't even want a mansion. I want that board house right there. That clean ocean air. But we run away because opportunities are limited, because life is cheap. We're not secured. We can get killed for anything, especially if we start to excel. Those with nothing start looking at you like food. Form bilateral relationships with the rest of the Caribbean and with Africa. Link the entire Caribbean as a unit to Africa. And last but not least, hold our leaders accountable. You know, I saw a post the other day where, let me just say this. I've found that our people are the type to worship their politicians rather than hold them accountable. That's it. You talk about how good they look. You talk about how good they dressed. You talk about how beautiful their big mansions are. You talk about how pretty their kids are and their wives and spouses are. But you never hold them accountable. And when you look at places like the Philippines, who dug themselves up out of the gutter by holding these politicians accountable. Long prison sentences and even death sentences for those who were found to be corrupt. So there would be no more sell out the country, because it would mean your life. So at the end of the day, you're going to say, okay, SouFlo, so all that sounds good, but the people down here, the politicians are up there. How do we get them to do what's right? The same way you come out in the thousands when they call you out for election is the same way you come out in the thousands when they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. March on their street in front of their house. Make sure they don't go to sleep because you put them there. If I am a contractor that was contracted to do some work on your house and I messed it up so badly, you wouldn't just pay me and walk away. You would make a big stink out of it. You would say, I'm not paying you until you fix that. It's the same thing. So we have to start holding our leaders accountable. And that, my friend, is where it all lies. I want you to take from this that it's not doomsday for us. But I am very well aware that it is going to take people who actually really care, and some who are actually really willing to sacrifice even life to make better tomorrow. Leave your comments in the comment section below. That was part 3 of They Have Big Plans for Us. It's SouFLoTV. Thank you for tuning in. I'm out. Peace.